Happy 2020! Look who lives! And by who lives, I mean the New Mutants movie, not me. Although I guess you could also apply it to me, in a way. Hi everybody, Carla here. It's 2020. Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a great turn of the year. I am back home in my apartment. After the holidays, I traveled back home to Panama, and then now I'm back to work here in Australia. So yeah, it's been an eventful time, I guess, over the past few months, and I haven't been around much, I know that, but I wanted to do a video to start off the year, and I was wondering what might be good to talk about. There were a bunch of things that I could theoretically talk about. I mean, the new Star Wars movie came out. If you haven't been following my social media, you'll know that I liked it for the most part. It's definitely not my favorite out of the new trilogy. I think it's actually my least favorite out of the new trilogy, but I didn't hate it. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, especially once it got going. The beginning was a little iffy, and there were certain twists that I did not like at all, but for the most part, I think it's fairly successful, and there were a lot of things that they were that I figured they might do that I thought I was going to hate, and it turned out that I actually quite liked them. I think they did them well. For the most part, there was just the one twist that really bothered me, but apart from that, I really enjoyed the movie. There's a battle going on as far as Star Wars is concerned in the internet, and that's not new, and sincerely speaking, of course, Star Wars is divisive nowadays, so I could have told you that half the fandom was going to hate this movie and half the fandom was going to really love it. I'm somewhere in between. Like, I liked it enough. It's not my favorite. I still love The Last Jedi most of all, but that doesn't mean that this movie was awful or anything. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Star Wars. I don't really want to delve too deep into it because, boy, is it controversial apparently. I also thought about, speaking of controversial, to maybe do a video about specific movies that I like and that I get frustrated about when there's a divide between the critics and the fandom. Particularly, this has happened in the last two Star Wars movies. It's a thing that's happening really often. Like, the critics will either like it and the fandom will dislike it, or the fandom will really like it even though the critics really dislike it. In my personal opinion, the movie that I would focus on in this case is The Lion King, because I don't think it's getting the same treatment as the Star Wars movies do. Like, the Star Wars movies get called divisive, whereas The Lion King is just like, it was a movie. Like, I'm talking about, of course, the 2019 remake, not the original. The original is widely loved by both fans and critics, but the remake is getting this treatment. If you look at it in Rotten Tomatoes, it's like the critics didn't like it, and then the fandom really seems to love it for some reason. Like, there's like 30-point difference in between those numbers, and I would like to explore a little bit why with The Lion King it's like, oh, it's because it wasn't good rather than it's divisive. I'm sorry, audiences seem to like it, so why are you treating it like it's not good? While Star Wars gets the divisive treatment, you know? So I thought about that. Let me know if you guys think that I should do a video about that, because believe me, I could rant about that for hours. I love The Lion King. I love the original. I loved the remake. I thought it was mind-blowing. So yeah, I have opinions about that. If you want me to talk about that in the future, let me know, and I'll probably make a video about that later on. But also, I just went to see the new Little Women movie yesterday. I loved it. It was for sure my favorite movie of 2019, and I think it's so innovative, and I really loved it. I think Greta Gerwig is a freaking genius, and I would have done a review about it. I don't think I should. I feel like I need to watch it again just to like really put together my thoughts, but it would have been a positive review either way. I really like that. I think that movie is a masterpiece. I have watched the 1994 adaptation a bajillion thousand times. It's not an exaggeration. Like, I watch it like twice a year, every year, and I feel like I like this even better. Like, I think Greta Gerwig just took something that I already knew and loved and gave it a very small twist, a very small shift in perspective, and it gave it all the more meaning. So I could also talk about that, or I could talk about the latest season of Anne with an E, which I watched on my Trans-Pacific flight, and I really loved it. I thought it was a great season. I thought it was a great ending. It turns out it's gonna be the last season, which really sucks because I love that show. I think it's so good. But I really liked it, and I could have reviewed it for this video too. So all of those were possible topics that were sort of, toiling in my mind as I debated with myself what to do this video about. And then a New Year's miracle occurred. That's not an exaggeration. All of a sudden, around the end of the month, it was revealed that there was a new trailer for the New Mutants movie coming out. And a lot of people have been wondering if this movie was even going to be released in theaters. I mean, it had been postponed so often that it had a release date of April 3rd for this year, but people genuinely were like, I won't believe it till I see it in theaters. So it was a bit buzzy that all of a sudden there were rumors of a trailer, then it was confirmed that a trailer was coming out, and then the trailer came out last week. And you know what? Sometimes I feel like I'm the only person in the universe that is actually hoping for this movie to get released in theaters, because I mean, there were a lot of rumors that it might just get dumped on like Hulu or Disney Plus or whatever, just to recoup for Disney to recoup their loss, for Fox to recoup their loss. And I love the X-Men movies. I know they haven't been the best as of late, let's just put it that way. I like Dark Phoenix for the most part. I do not think it was the most inspirational X-Men movie, but it was fine. It wasn't terrible. I do think it was missing a little bit of the soul that X-Men movies usually have, but I liked it better than Apocalypse. I thought Apocalypse was not as bad as it could have been. It wasn't as much as a disaster as previous X-Men movies has been, but it was really 50-50. Like, 50% of the movie was great, and then the latter 50% was just a train wreck. And I like Dark Phoenix more than Apocalypse, so I don't have the hang-ups that most people seem to have when it comes to the X-Men movies. I still hold on to my love of the X-Men movies because the X-Men are my favorite comic book property of all time. I've mentioned this thousands of times before on this channel, but when people ask, do you like Marvel or do you like DC, I generally say I like Marvel because that was mostly what I read when I was growing up. But I don't really like all of Marvel. Like, I never cared about the Avengers when I was growing up. I don't like Spider-Man. I've been very vocal about the fact that I hate Spider-Man, or at least Peter Parker's Spider-Man. I don't read Spider-Man comics, I don't read Avengers comics, I don't care for the huge crossover things. When it comes to Marvel Comics, my thing has always been mutants. And because of that, I quite like this idea that Fox had the mutants to themselves and could make several mutant movies in a semi-regular, schedule that were just contained to mutants, right? Because I don't want to see crossovers. I don't care to see Wolverine in the Avengers. I might be the only person in the world who feels this way, but I I don't care about it. I just don't. I don't like the Avengers, so I would rather just have my mutants be mutants. And I think the mutant universe, which is kind of a subdivision of the bigger Marvel universe, is big enough that it can stand on its own without needing all this crossover that for me is unnecessary. So I've always been a fan of Fox having the Marvel properties, and for the most part I think they've done a good job. Yes, some of the movies have been utter disasters. I'm not saying it's not like that. Certainly Wolverine Origins, I'm looking at you. The original Last Stand, you know, that did the Dark Phoenix saga for the first time, was no good. But I think they've had just as many great movies as they've had bad movies, you know? And sure, maybe 50-50 odds aren't great, but I would rather have that than them being absorbed into the Marvel universe and mostly ignored. Because that's my biggest fear, that incorporating mutants into the existing MCU will just dilute the stories that could be told with just mutants. And it will limit the amount of movies that I get about mutants, because now you have to share all this space and all this bandwidth with the bigger Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, you know, I gave Fox a lot of leeway even when their movies weren't great, but I do think they made some of the greatest superhero movies of all time. Like X2 is a freaking marvel. For sure, the first X-Men was what started the entire superhero craze, absolutely. And I am a very big fan. I know people love Days of Future Past. I like it too. It's not my favorite. I prefer First Class much more, actually. But I think those movies are fantastic. They're really great. Logan is incredible. Deadpool is amazing. And it's just, I fear that if these characters are folded into the MCU, then we'll get a lot of movies that focus on them interacting with the non-mutant characters and none that actually focus just on the plight of the mutants themselves. So I tend to give Fox a lot of leeway in that sense. The merger is done now. There's not much I can do about it at this point. I guess the mutants are going to pop up in the MCU somehow. Not anytime soon, apparently, according to Kevin Feige. And don't get me wrong, I don't think, like, I'm not upset that they're going to be done by Marvel. I do think that Marvel directly is perfectly capable of giving us great stories about the mutants, because, you know, the whole, you know, Send Them Back to Marvel thing was always more about the quality, and I don't doubt that Marvel can give us quality mutant movies. I'm just worried about how often that's going to happen and how often it's going to involve characters that have nothing to do with mutants and take the spotlight away from mutants. That's my biggest issue. But I do trust Kevin Feige. I like the MCU. Even though the Avengers aren't my favorite characters, they've managed to make movies about these characters that I generally don't like when it comes to comics, and they've been able to make me like them. So I do not doubt Kevin Feige. I do not doubt the MCU machine. I know that I'm gonna get great mutant movies whenever they do happen. So now that that's done, all I can do is, you know, look forward to that. But we did still have a few remnants of the Fox Marvel universe, and one of them was New Mutants. And I was really excited about New Mutants, more than most people were, because I always thought that where the Fox Mutant universe excelled was at taking things as they were and twisting them, or giving them a different spin. You know, like the straightforward X-Men movies, eventually they started fizzling out. And you can sort of see that with Apocalypse and then Dark Phoenix. But the movies that were sort of standalones within the X-Men universe, like the Logans and the Deadpools, those were always great. Even Deadpool 2, I loved Deadpool 2. I think it was a great movie. Not as good as the first one, but the first one was quite a surprise. And I think when they take these movies and they do different things, when they take these characters and they do different things with them than just a straightforward superhero movie, they have something great on their hands. And I thought New Mutants could be the next one of those, you know? The next one that wasn't a straightforward superhero movie. It was actually supposed to be a somewhat of a horror-tinged mutant movie. And I was always really excited about that, on top of the fact that I like the New Mutants. I like them as characters. I've read a lot about them from the comics, so I was hyped to finally see them get their turn on screen. And the fact that this is kind of a spin-off of the X-Men universe, the main X-Men universe, but it still has the theme of being a mutant within it, while being almost a separate genre, I thought could make for a really good movie, basically. Now, the first trailer for this came out back in October 2017, which is a freaking long ass time ago. And it was received with mixed reaction for the most part, because it read like a straightforward horror movie. I quite liked it. I was super excited for this movie. I liked the twist. I liked the idea that this wasn't just your typical superhero movie, there was something different about it. And the horror angle makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, these are kids, these are teenagers that are suddenly developing these powers, and not all mutant powers are like super glamorous and flashy. Like, they're not all super strong, they're not all like guts of thunder or whatever. Some of these powers are quite scary, and the mainstream X-Men movies sort of try to take that angle a little bit with Rogue, especially because her powers are so freaking scary. But of course, when you're in the middle of this group of literal superheroes, even that kind of power looks a little bit more glamorous. But for mutants out there, for many of them, these powers could be a curse. These powers could be terrifying, you know, when it's not something that looks pretty or is impressive, when it's something that might make people hate you or be afraid of you, when it's something that might involve some kind of control over other people, that just attraction of the dark side inherent with that type of power. So I thought it was really interesting that we get to explore those kinds of mutants in this movie, because getting your power at a very young age and having it be a really freaking scary power can be really freaking scary. And I think it makes total sense that it could be like something out of a horror movie, right? So I was super hyped for New Mutants. That trailer came out, then the movie was supposed to come out in April of 2018, and then it got postponed, and then it got postponed again, and then and then the merger happened, and it's like, is this thing even going to come out? And I feel like I'm the only person in the world who was praying, like keeping her fingers crossed for New Mutants to actually make it to theaters at some point. Most people had already forgotten about this. I hadn't. I was still looking forward to it. I was hoping it would land on Hulu or Disney Plus. I think this movie deserves, a release, because so many people worked so hard, and I think Josh Boone is a good director. The only movie of his I've seen is The Fault in Our Stars, which is very different from New Mutants, both in tone and content. But I think he's a good director, and it really seemed like he was passionate about this project, and the cast was fantastic. Like, one of my favorite things in the world is when this cast was announced, and I was like, yes, that is perfect. So I was really looking forward to this movie, and I probably was alone because everybody just sort of gave up on it, and especially when rumors of like reshoots and whatever started coming out. But now it seems like it's actually happening. We have a new trailer, and people are sort of remembering, oh yeah, this movie was supposed to come out. I never forgot. Just saying. I've been looking forward to this, like, it's been on my most anticipated of the year for every year since 2018. So I've been waiting for this, and I'm so glad we got this new trailer and that it looks like it's finally coming out. I will definitely be there as soon as I possibly can after release date, and I will support it, and I hope it's good. I genuinely don't have any reason to think that it would not be good. We've actually heard, once this trailer was announced, somebody asked Josh Boone in his Instagram account if this movie was then like the cut after reshoots and whatever, and we had heard a lot of stuff about these reshoots that supposedly wanted to make it more scary or less scary, or I don't know what it was, but it breach of studio interference. But we heard from some of the cast through the delay, and they didn't, like, it seemed like the reshoots never took place, which I guess it's a good thing, because, you know, Disney came in and they were like, yo, should we do these reshoots? Should we not do these reshoots? The whole thing was in limbo for a while. But somebody asked Josh Boone when the trailer came out if this was post-reshoots, and he was like, no, this is my original cut, and I wouldn't be promoting it here in my Instagram and my social media if it wasn't. So I think that's good. I think it's great that the filmmaker is still 100% behind this movie. I guess there hasn't been as much studio interference as people feared there would be, which I think is a good thing. Mind you, I don't necessarily think reshoots are a bad thing, but it's been a while, so if they had done reshoots after all this delay, it would have been a bit concerning. Like, how do you patch those together if they've been separated by such a long period of time? But I don't think reshoots are bad per se. I don't think studio interference is bad per se. There have been many movies that have had reshoots and have turned out great. Think of, say, Rogue One, for example, which worked just fine, and the movie was pretty damn good in the end. So I'm not necessarily concerned about the reshoots, but I know a lot of people are. So a lot of people are still sort of looking at this, even with a new trailer out, looking at it skeptically. But I've been watching trailer reactions for the past few days, and it turns out that people are actually liking the trailer. It's actually, the reaction has seemed a little bit more positive than it was to the first trailer, honestly, because a lot of people saw the first trailer and just didn't get any X-Men vibes from it. Like, there, other than the mention of the word mutants, there wasn't really much, I guess, pizzazz to it. There was no, like, there were no, like, powers and stuff. So for people who are into superhero movies, that was kind of a disappointment. I liked it, the first trailer. I loved this one, and I'm really glad that it's being better received this time around, even though people are still skeptical. Like, I know that there are people that won't believe this is coming out until the day it actually comes out in theaters. So, you know, I understand the skepticism here, but give this movie a chance. I hope it's not one of those things where people just forgot about it, so it's gonna flop. I really think this has a good probability of being good, especially if it is the director's original cut and his original vision. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this trailer because I really enjoyed it. I've been waiting for this movie for years, and if it's going to be the last Fox X-Men movie that I get, which for me feels like the end of an era, I hope it's good. Because people are already complaining about Dark Phoenix like ending up with a whimper rather than a bang. Like I said, I like Dark Phoenix for the most part. It's not the greatest X-Men movie, but it wasn't terrible, as many of people seem to be making it sound like. But I definitely would have wanted the Fox X-Men universe to go out on a stronger note than just this kind of general disappointment of the fandom. So if this is gonna be the last Fox X-Men movie I get, then I really want it to be good, and I really have my hopes up that it is good, and it's looking good so far. So I will be here to support it. And now let's just talk a little bit about the trailer because there are so many things in this trailer that I find really interesting, and I just really want to touch on them really fast. So once again, we sort of follow Dani Moonstar through the trailer. She's sort of our eyes into this institution, which I think is really, really smart. Look, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, so I'm just gonna leave a small warning here and say I'm a comic book reader. I know a lot about the plots, the comic book plots that this movie has been said to be based on. If you don't want to have this is all speculation on my part, for sure. I don't know anything for certain, but if you want to go into this movie and be completely surprised by all the twists that come out, you might not want to. You might want to be careful with what I'm saying now, because I will touch upon what the comics plotline is. So I just want to warn you about that before I actually say anything.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
Yeah, the funny thing is I've been watching video reactions on YouTube for this trailer for like the past few days, and I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to the X-Men, in case you haven't been able to tell yet. When it comes to the X-Men universe, I take it really seriously, and one of the funnest parts of this is watching people who have no freaking idea who these characters are, what this whole plot is even about, what is going on, and try to make sense of it and be completely wrong. I just love, like, even people who love X-Men sort of aren't very well versed into New Mutants lore, and so they have like general knowledge of these characters, but they don't know the details, and they try to like guess what's happening, and it's all wrong, and it just makes me laugh so hard. Like, I love you guys for trying, but I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to these characters, so I find myself yelling at my TV way too often while I was watching these reviews, these trailer reviews. So I will try to set, you know, a few things straight as I comment on this trailer. If you don't want to know anything, if you want to go into this movie completely blank, then maybe you wanna like pause this and maybe come back later, because I don't know that these speculation that I'm bringing up here is exactly going to be what happens in the movie. Like, comic book movies have been known to fudge a little with the comic book plot. Like, they will have the spirit of the plot but not be exactly the same. I mean, Captain America Civil War was nothing like Civil War in the comics in the details, but the spirit of it, the splitting of the Avengers, really was what Civil War in the comics was about. Even though the characters were different and just the things that happened were different, the spirit of it was the same, and this might be just like that. So if you really don't want to like have me ruin any surprises, just keep that in mind. But as I was saying, we follow Dani Moonstar in this trailer as we did in the first trailer, and I think that's a very smart move, because I see, even since the first trailer, I have highly suspected that a lot of what we're seeing here, a lot of the horror tropes that we're seeing here, are directly related to Dani Moonstar. In case you didn't know who Dani Moonstar is, she's her codename is Mirage. She has the ability to like take people's dreams and make them real, you know? And that is a bit of a problem when it comes to nightmares because they can be quite horrific. And so there's a point in the trailer where Cecilia Reyes, which is Alicia Braga's character, says this place takes your worst nightmares and makes them true until they kill you. I'm wondering if this place isn't necessarily this hospital that they're in, but rather Dani's power. Like, if Dani were not there, none of this would be happening. And I have the very sneaking suspicion, because of how little we've seen of any potential villain in these two trailers, I have a sneaky suspicion that everything that's going on is going to be put on Dani's powers, basically. Like, it's all going to be a result of her losing control of her powers and putting everyone in danger. I know that it's been said that Demon Bear, who is an X-Men antagonist, is going to be a part of this, and in fact the entire Demon Bear storyline from the comics is what this movie is supposed to be based on. And in the comics, Demon Bear is an actual entity. Like, he wasn't something made up by Danny. It was an actual, psionic entity that was trying to hurt Danny through her powers, basically. We even see glimpses of Demon Bear in this trailer. However, I think the movie is going to take this approach that maybe Danny is the one creating Demon Bear. So in essence, Danny is both the victim and also the villain of the movie. And I think that could be really interesting if they do go that way. Like, everything that's happening is just Danny's powers, rather than them having some, evil entity actually trying to kill them all. I think that would be really interesting, and I think that's hinted at by the idea that Danny is sort of our eyes and ears into this new Mutants universe. I also find it very interesting because at one point, Cecilia Reyes says, we have to find out what your powers are so we can teach you how to control them, basically. And that's the thing. I don't think any of them know what Danny can do. And that is why I think that line convinced me more than anything that the movie is going to play this off as Demon Bear being not a thing, not a real entity, but something that is created by Danny's powers as a reaction to her discovering that she's a mutant and being put into this hospital where they're trying to experiment on her, basically. Like, her powers just act up and create these dangerous situations. And Demon Bear is sort of a part of that. It's maybe a part of her own nightmares that she's making real into the world. So yeah, I think there are hints in this trailer that they might go this way. And with every piece of information that we get about this movie, I become a little bit more certain of that. Now, if it turns out that Demon Bear is an actual real entity, I wouldn't be upset. Like, that's the way it was in the comics, and it's fine by me. If they stick to the comics, that's even better. But I do feel like they're gonna go with a more, Danny's powers are the real enemy type of thing in this movie. And then through Danny, we get to know all the other new mutants, which of course I love in this trailer that we get introduced to them one by one. First we see Rain, who's of course Rain Sinclair. She basically has the power to transform into a wolf. She can also half transform, so she's kind of werewolf-like and stuff. And again, this is one of those powers that I mentioned that, holy shit, if that just happens to you in the middle of a crowd, people are gonna think you are freaking scary and try to kill you. And I suspect that's what we hear from Rain in this case, that maybe it happened in the crowd. I know in the comics what happened was, yes, that she transformed and people thought she lived in a really Catholic town. She's Irish, and she lived in a deeply Catholic town, and when her transformation occurred the first time, people thought she was a demon and they tried to kill her. So yeah, that can be traumatic. And I wonder if in this case, because we see her sort of crying in a graveyard of sorts. Of course, I assume that this is some kind of illusion from Mirage, but she might be reliving her worst nightmare, which might be just the day she turned, and maybe she lost control of her powers. Maybe she couldn't control the wolf, and maybe she killed a bunch of people. I think maybe she killed her family. Who knows? I think it can be a very powerful imagery when it comes to Rain, to really illustrate that these powers are not glamorous things. They can be really freaking scary, especially when you're a kid when it happens to you. Then we move on to Sam. Sam, who's played by Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things, who I love, and I think, again, Rain is played by Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones. She's, everybody's favorite Arya Stark. And then Charlie Heaton as Sam Guthrie. I love this casting. I think it's perfect, and I'm so psyched that I get to see them on the big screen being these characters because I think it's just perfection. So we go to Sam, and he explains that he says, I panicked and lots of people got hurt. As we know, Sam's code name is Cannonball. His mutant abilities are to expel thermomechanical energy from his body. You can sort of see that in the trailer later on when we're actually seeing the powers. He goes just like that with his arms, and then light expels out from his arms. He can do that with his entire body, and when he does it with hands and feet, he can use that expulsion of energy to propel himself like a cannonball. When he's actually in that form, he's pretty much indestructible a lot of the time. So when Sam, in the comics, when Sam discovers his powers, he's inside a mine. And we actually see that again later on when we're seeing these characters reliving their worst nightmares. We see Sam inside a mine. And what happened to Sam in the comics is that he was working in the mines with his uncle, I believe, and there was a cave-in. And he started freaking out, and that's when his powers manifested, and he was able to use his cannonball ability to get himself and his uncle out of the mine. Now, I wonder if in this movie universe, instead, it may turn out that he was the one who caused the cave-in instead, and that maybe his powers manifesting down there in a scary mine at a very young age caused a lot of people to die. I think it's a very real possibility, and I think Sam is not the scariest of characters. His powers are very, X-Men mainstreamy, in my opinion, but you could take those powers and look at them from a different angle and sort of understand why he might be afraid of them and why he might feel guilty at something that happened regarding his powers. So I think that's the angle that they're going to take with him, definitely, that he did something, and it's hinted at in this trailer that he did something. He panicked when he noticed his powers were manifesting for the first time. He panicked, and he caused a lot of people to die. And I do think it's going to be related to the mine directly, because we do see the mine later on. And I think the mine was the first part that made me really cheer when I saw this trailer, because it made me feel, holy crap, they're really sticking close to canon here. Sam has his southern accent, which I think is great. I'm so used to Charlie Heaton. I can't wrap my head around the fact that Charlie Heaton is British, because I'm so used to him in Stranger Things. But even in Stranger Things, with his US accent, it's still not like a southern accent. So when he was cast as Sam, I was worried that they might not keep the southern accent. But you can hear it in this trailer, and it's great. It made me cheer. And it just, the mine scene made me really cheer, because it makes me feel like they're really being true. I mean, they might be taking some liberties with the characters, but they're trying to really stick true to what they are in the comics, and I think that's great. So after Sam, who I love Sam, then we see Roberto da Costa, also known as Sunspot. His power is basically he can absorb energy from the sun and then use that energy as fuel for super strength, or he can also expel that energy in the form of light or thermal energy, which goes straight to the point of this trailer where he says that he burned his freaking girlfriend. That is terrifying. Fucking hell. When I saw that hand coming up and touching him and freaking out, that was crazy. Now, Roberto's discovery of his powers in the comics was not like that. He's Brazilian. So he was playing football for you US people and British people and whatever, and English speaking people, that would be soccer. But he was playing football with some guys, and one of them, I believe, accused him of cheating or something like that, and he's a bit of a hothead, Roberto, and so he immediately went to like try to start a fight with this dude. In the middle of a fight, it turned out that he discovered that he was super strong, and his skin turned black, and he went into his sunspot form without really meaning to, and that's how he discovered his powers. But I like, again, they have the ability to take these powers that seem fairly, benign for the most part when you have them controlled, and they were able to twist them in a way that, if something had happened differently, that could have been really terrifying for them and for the people around them. So, if Sunspot had manifested the ability to generate thermal energy rather than super strength, he could have killed people around him. And in this trailer, they go straight to that point. They immediately just say he burned his girlfriend. And that is freaking scary, Like, I've seen a lot of people complaining that maybe they're trying to go for horror, but it's not really scary. But the fear here is not in the visuals. It's not necessarily in the story. It's not in the jump scares. The fear here is in the idea that these are kids, and these powers are terrifying, and that is a concept that's always been a part of the X-Men, but it hasn't been able to be touched upon really in the mainstream X-Men movies, and I think this is the perfect way to deal with it. And I think Roberto is the perfect character to show us that, because he would fit perfectly in the superhero mainstream X-Men movies. He would fit perfectly. His powers work. Once he had them controlled, his powers are superhero and then some. But for a kid who's just finding out about these powers for the first time in probably the most horrible circumstances, that can be really freaking scary. So I really liked what they did with Roberto here. And then we have Illyana, who I love. Again, I was worried, and this made me cheer too. I was worried that they would completely ignore Illyana's background, because Colossus has been around in a couple of different iterations in the X-Men universe. Like, he was in X2 and X3, and then he was in Deadpool, and he was completely different in Deadpool, but a lot truer to his comic book roots. And so I was worried that they were going to leave out the fact that Illyana is Colossus's sister, and that she's Russian, and that she's just this weird kind of mutant type of gal. Like, Illyana's the best. Like, she's a really powerful character. She's one of the most powerful mutants out there, and she's a little bit quirky, let's just put it that way. But she's cool. She's a cool girl, but she has these incredible powers that can so easily go bad, And one of her powers is the ability to transport into limbo, basically, which is an evil dimension, basically. And she's seen so many things in that evil dimension that it's not a stretch of the imagination that she would be really messed up. So I kind of love the twist that they've done on Illyana here. Like, I don't think she's evil or anything. I think she's seen a lot of things. I think she's a little bit weird in the head, probably. Like, the glee with which she says that she's killed 18 men, I find that quite delicious, personally. But I don't think she's gonna be evil. I think in the end she's gonna be good and obviously fight to help the rest of the New Mutants. She's gonna be a friend to them as expected. So yeah, but I'm really, they've made her like a bit of a goth too. I think that's awesome. And Anya Taylor-Joy is, I haven't seen very many things with her on them because I'm not into straight horror necessarily, and I know she was like in Split and The Witch, and I haven't seen any of that stuff, so I don't know, but I trust when people say that she's a really good actress. And just from the glimpse I got of her in this trailer, I like her. I love that they went with the Russian accent. It makes her sound even edgier than she's supposed to look, I guess, which I really like. And for us comic book nerds, it's another hint that they're not ignoring her background at all, that she might actually be Peter's sister, you know? But there's just something wrong with her, and it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that her experiences in limbo and everything might have sort of loosened the screws up a bit in the head. But in the end, I think she's going to be a good character, just a little bit edgy, I guess. You can't have them all be scaredy cat teenagers. One of them has to be the one that has the attitude, I guess, and they chose her to be it, and I really like what I see of her in the trailer. And again, I think they're being really true to her comic book roots. The first time I watched the trailer, I hadn't noticed the soul sword. Upon rewatch, I noticed that she has the soul sword with her in the tag at the end of the trailer. She has a soul sword. It's glowing in her hand. I fucking love that. I freaked out. If you didn't see it on Twitter, I just key smashed for a bunch of tweets because I love that she has a soul sword. That means she's been to limbo. That maybe the portal that she's coming through in the tag at the end of the trailer is her porting through limbo in order to get to this to fight Demon Bear. So I think it makes total sense that she's a little cuckoo because of everything that's happened in limbo, I guess, and everything that she's seen in there. This is not your average teenager that will just cower at the sight of her powers. She's probably quite proud of them in a very scary way, and I like what they're doing with her. I can't wait to see more of her. Like, I'm super... Magic is one of the greatest comic book characters of all time. I think she's fantastic. I've been waiting to see Illyana in an X-Men movie for ages. Like, ever since I first saw Colossus, everyone was like, Colossus, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I like Peter, sure, but Illyana, let's bring her in. Because she's super cool. So yeah, I'm psyched. Just from everything I see from her, I am super thrilled. A few details that I did notice here and there. I don't know, if you might want to check my Twitter. I retweeted, I believe it was a tweet from Quejandro that had a GIF on it from the trailer. And in the GIF, it seems like there's something small and blue sort of fluttering around Demon Bear at one point and like sending energy beams against it, like shooting it with energy beams. And you can't really see it very clearly as to what it is, but it's something that's flying. And people speculate that it might be Lockheed, which, oh my god, if it's Lockheed, I will die. I will, seriously. Lockheed is a dragon from an alternate dimension that basically became partnered with Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat, who you might know from like the original X-Men movies at Fox. She was played by Ellen Page. But Lockheed was one of those aspects of Kitty Pryde that was deemed too fantastical for the X-Men movies. Because they were trying to like ground them in reality and whatever. But if magic is going to be traversing through limbo and, you know, appearing and disappearing through portals through limbo, it's not a stretch to think that maybe Lockheed is from that dimension and he might pop up here as Illyana's friend. It's funny because Illyana is one of Kitty's best friends. She has a few gal pals. Kitty. She has a few gal pals that are renowned as being her best friends. Rachel Summers is one, for example. She's also really good friends with Kurt, Nightcrawler, basically. I ship them, but that's aside from everything, I guess. But they're best friends. And Illyana is, you could say she's pretty much Kitty's best friend in the whole world. And if they're not gonna give Lockheed to Kitty because they're trying to keep Kitty realistic or whatever, Magic's entire thing is magic. Like, her powers are not realistic in the least at all. Like, it's right there in the name. So I think it would fit perfectly that they would give her Lockheed instead. And I never thought that I would see Lockheed in any X-Men movie ever. I thought that was one of those little comic book details that were just too far-fetched to actually ever make it into the movies. And if they put Lockheed in this movie, I'm going to freak. I'm so scared for anybody who goes to watch this movie with me, because if Lockheed is in this movie, I will flip out completely in the middle of the theater. I have been wanting Lockheed since forever, and I was convinced that it was never gonna happen. So I'm just saying, this movie might make me really, really happy. I'm just saying. So that's one detail that we see in the trailer that might be interesting if you're a comic book fan. Another thing that's interesting is that it almost looks like Danny and Rain are gonna have a thing, which I like. I'm excited about it. I was kind of hoping when this plotline for the movie and the characters were released originally, I was kind of hoping that it would be Danny and Ileana. That is a personal choice because I have been wanting Ileana to be a lesbian for decades. I'm just saying, like, she just seems like see, Ileana isn't really, she doesn't really have sentimental, like, romantic relationships. She hasn't really had them traditionally because there's always been so much going on with her that she's just like, she hasn't really had like a great love of her life like many of her friends have. And I know a lot of people ship her with Kitty because they're such good friends. I don't, because I ship Kitty with other characters. But it honestly would make all the sense in the world for her to be a lesbian in the comics. I haven't read the most recent stuff. I haven't read comics in a long time, but when I was growing up, she didn't have any relationships, so I don't know what the current status of her sexuality is. If she's even had a relationship at this point, if she's even around anymore, I don't know. Traditionally, I sort of always wanted her to be a lesbian because, I don't know, it's like her and Rachel Summers, and they sort of just seem like they make really cool lesbians. I don't know. I don't even know that I ship them together or anything. But like I get this vibe from them, I guess, that they would be totally okay with like being in love with a woman. And so when it was revealed that Ileana was going to be in this movie and that Danny was going to be in there too, I thought, oh, it would be really cool if they put these two together. So I was hoping that it would be Danny and Ileana, but if it's Danny and Rain, I'm fine with it too. Rain, I know that she's had things for dudes. I don't know how it is in the comics at this point, like maybe she's bisexual or something, which is fine by me. And I know that Macy and Blue are going to knock it out of the park. You can already see some of that chemistry in the trailer, so I'm not upset. I'm glad that Danny is in a relationship with a woman because that also makes sense to me. She's had a lot of close friendships with girls in the comics, so I think that's interesting. And I think it also makes sense that it's Rain because in the comics they have an empathic link. Danny is she's Native American, basically, and because of that, one of her abilities is to have empathic links with animals. Like, you know, as a Native American, she's more in tune with nature than most other mutants are, and that's one of her powers. She's able to form empathic links with animals. And Rain can transform into a wolf. So at one point they realize that there can be an empathic link between them. And in the comics it hasn't really gone anywhere. Like they're really close friends, which is a thing. But I guess it's not that big of a jump to make them like each other in the movie. So I'm not upset. I'm still waiting for Ileana to be a lesbian. It's gonna happen someday, I tell you. But yeah, I'm glad for the representation always. I think the LGBT community is one of the few that hasn't really been represented in the X-Men movies, which is kind of funny because mutants are very much a metaphor for minority groups, starting with racial minorities originally in the 60s, but through the 80s it very clearly became a metaphor for the LGBT community, the HIV positive community, and I think it's time that representation popped up in the movies at some point. So I quite like that, and it makes total sense to do it in a movie about teenagers, because that's around the time that they're trying to come to terms with both their sexuality and their mutant powers, I guess. So it makes total sense. So yeah, I quite like this trailer. I'm gonna wrap it up a little bit. I'm just gonna say I don't particularly think it's going to be very scary. Like, I don't like horror movies for the most part, but I don't find this trailer to be particularly scary. I find it to be really interesting because of the psychological connotations of it. I think this is going to be more of a psychological thing. People have been complaining that there are a couple of jump scares in the trailer. Yeah, because these are nightmares that are being made real. So that makes sense that there would be a lot of jump scares, because that's how nightmares work, really, a lot of the time. So I don't mind the jump scares all that much. I don't think it's going to be about jump scares. I don't think the purpose of this movie is to scare you in the moment. I don't think obviously the visuals are very horror movie-esque, but I think that's more about the setting the tone rather than actually scaring you. And also paying some sort of homage to and just giving this whole movie a sort of a different genre type. But I don't think it's meant to be scary. I think it's meant to be one of those things that you watch and sort of captivates you, and then when you walk out of the theater you think back on it and you realize, holy shit, if I had been put in that situation, that would have been really freaking scary. Not just because somebody might, some giant bear might jump out of the darkness and take a bite out of you, but because these are kids dealing with really huge, scary, dangerous superpowers that they don't know how to control, and some of them don't even know that they have. Like, remember that Danny doesn't know what's going on here, basically. They all think that these things that are happening to them are real, and I think the psychological thriller aspect to it is what is really going to stand out. I don't think this is meant to be to make people scream at the movie theater. I think this is meant to make people think and be scared by the conclusions that they come from those thoughts that the movie puts into their mind. So yeah, I really like this trailer. I thought it was really cool. We got to see a little bit of their powers, which should, I hope, satisfy a little bit the chorus of people who were complaining about the first trailer about it having, superpowers in it. Now we get to see a little bit of the superpowers. We get to see Sunspot. I do hope that they make the CGI on him a little bit better, because it felt a little choppy, but I understand that this is just, it's technically a first trailer. They will have some more hopefully before April, and it will look better. But I quite liked what they did with Sam's powers. I love what they did with Ileana's. Like, Ileana apart from the soul sword, just the way that her arm armored up, basically, and then the tag at the end with portal, it was amazing to see. I love that shot of her with the glowing eyes, and it just sort of pans up, and it's like she's almost being more Phoenix than Phoenix, which I quite like. Of course, Ileana's power set is completely different from Jean Grey's or Rachel Summers, but that glowing thing is an image that many of us have come to associate with Phoenix as a character, and even with Dark Phoenix at one point. But I quite like that they used it very well with magic, because she is that powerful, and I think that's what that shot inspires, this idea that holy crap, this girl, even if you don't know what she can do, you're going to see that and think, okay, she's a powerful person, because that is a superhero shot right there. And so I quite like that. And again, there's I hope, I have my fingers crossed that this movie is good. I quite enjoyed this trailer. I might be the only person in the world who is super hyped for this movie. It is my most anticipated movie of the year, and it has a lot of stiff competition because, Mulan is coming out this year, which I love, and there's the Artemis Fowl movie, which I've also been waiting for a long time. There's a bunch of movies coming out this year, and Wonder Woman 1984. There's a bunch of movies coming out this year that I'm really, hyped for, but these are the mutants. My mutants. The X-Men that I love. And they're not literally X-Men, but just the X-Men universe that I love. And it's going to be the last hurrah for the Fox Marvel universe, which so many people love to deride, but I appreciate it so much. The Fox Marvel universe, the Fox Mutant universe, gave us as film goers, as comic book fans, so much good that I think a lot of people, because their feelings are tainted by the last couple of movies that have come out from Fox, they just sort of forget about everything that's already been out. I'm not one of them. I know that things at Fox weren't great over the past few years, but I think they've given me great things, and I will always be appreciative of them for that. And again, if this is the last I'm going to have of the Fox Marvel universe, I really hope it's good. And from this trailer, I have every hope that it can be good. I trust this cast. I trust Josh Boone, what it seems like he has done with this movie. If it's his cut, then I'm super happy about it. And I just can't wait to see. I will probably, if I have time in April to come back after I watch it and do a review of it, I will let you know. But I am keeping my fingers crossed, because this is my most anticipated movie of the year, really. And I know that people make fun of it because of everything that's happened and the whole delay thing, and just this idea that, now it's going back to Marvel, so this movie doesn't matter at all. Hey, it matters to me, okay? I like these characters, I like this idea, I like this movie, and I want to see it do well. So if you found this trailer even the least bit interesting, give this movie a chance. It's the last you will see of an era of movies, and maybe the Marvel movies that come after this will just, retcon everything, although it seems they're keeping Deadpool, so I don't know how that's gonna work. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they carve out a niche mutant universe that's separate from everything else, because you've already introduced the multiverse, and I know that the Doctor Strange sequel is going to be about a multiverse, so you could have a universe where mutants are real and it's completely separate from all the other superheroes, and just every once in a while a portal opens and they cross over and you have your big crossover movie. I'd be totally fine with that if it means that I get movies that are just about mutants alone, and I'm hoping that's what they do. I'm hoping they keep sort of the 20th Century Fox banner, if not the actual people from the studio, but just the banner itself, because Deadpool is going to be rated R. So I don't think they're going to want to release Deadpool under the Marvel Studios banner necessarily, because it's so entrenched in the PG-13 rating. New Mutants is going to be PG-13, but if they could like carve out this little sub studio within Disney that is 20th Century Fox and put all the mutant properties in there on their own and let them make their own movies, and then maybe later on crossover them with the main MCU, I would love that. I know that this is a hugely unpopular opinion. I know people are psyched to see these characters, these mutants, cross over with the MCU, even though I'm not. And that's great, and it will probably go your way, guys, and I will just have to sit here and take it. And I will probably like it either way. I'm not saying this is going to be a bad thing. I trust Kevin Feige. I trust that Marvel makes great movies that make me like them, even though I don't generally like these characters in the comics. So it's not that I'm complaining, I just have a really hard time just dealing with the fact that the Marvel Mutant Universe isn't going to be a Marvel Mutant Universe anymore. Because that's the way I see the mutants in my head. Even though they are part of the larger Marvel Universe, and even in the comics, I try to not look at the crossover events, I try to just read books that keep them confined to mutants and interacting with mutants. That's how I prefer it. But I have no doubt that Marvel Studios is a great, they're full of great creatives, and if they're going to make mutant movies, the movies are probably going to be great, and if they're going to make mutant superhero crossover movies, they're probably going to be great. So I'm not complaining, I'm just hopeful, that maybe since Deadpool is staying in its own side of things, that they could possibly keep the mutants on that side along with Deadpool, that would make me very happy. But however they do it, at this point, obviously there's nothing I can do. They will figure it out among themselves, and in the meantime I have this one movie, which might be my last hurrah when it comes to having mutants in their own universe, so I'm gonna cling on to it. And I beg each and every one of you, if you thought this trailer was at all interesting, please support this movie, don't let it flop. Let's have the X-Men universe go out on a positive note, and pray to Jesus that this movie is good. I am rooting for it so hard. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'll be back probably in April to let you know what I thought about this, and if it turns out it's not good, you'll hear about it from me. But I'm very inclined to think that this actually can be good. I like what I'm seeing from it so far, and I am optimistic. Probably annoyingly optimistic, but someone's gotta do it, so it's gonna be me. Anyway, that's about it from me today. This video is way longer than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be like half an hour or something of just me discussing the trailer, but of course, when it comes to X-Men and mutants, I have tons of things to say. So yeah, it's over an hour now. I guess we'll see what it trims down to, but I'm gonna shut up now. So yeah, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always happy to see people sharing and commenting and liking and subscribing. As always, if you want me to do a full video for any of the topics that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, let me know in a comment and I'll get to that. Or if you want me to talk about any other topic, that's out in geek culture at this moment, just comment and let me know, and I'll try my best to get on that if it's something that I find interesting. In the meantime, you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at girlsareweird with underscores between the words, and on Tumblr at girlsareweird with hyphens between the words. If you want to see a curated feed of only my fandom tweets, you might want to follow FreakingNarnia_, which is basically just me retweeting all my fandom tweets to that one account and leaving out anything that doesn't have anything to do with fandom, like, politics and science and personal stuff. If you just want to see my fandom, then you want to subscribe to FreakingNarnia _ on Twitter. That's the ticket right there. You can also find a Facebook page for this blog at facebook.com/FreakingNarnia. And as usual, be sure to visit my main website at FreakingNarnia.com. All my videos are up there, so in case you missed any and you want to catch up, it's all uploaded there. Just be sure to visit and check them out. Also, remember that I have a Redbubble store where I make art based on my favorite quotes from my favorite fandoms. I have a ton of stuff in there, and then you can use that art to print on merchandise such as coffee cups, t-shirts, computer covers, all kinds of neat stuff in there. So be sure to stop by and maybe purchase something if you're in the mood. It really does help me out. Also, remember, if you want to have this video on podcast form instead, all my videos are uploaded on the very same day that they go up on YouTube to my Patreon account. So if you would like to subscribe to my Patreon account for a small sum, you will get those podcast episodes instead on the same day as they go up on YouTube. Just go to patreon.com/FreakingNarnia and subscribe over there. It really does help me a lot. Remember, I'm just a broke-ass PhD student. I could use the help, and I don't know, I think that's it. I don't know that I had anything to do, but hopefully I'll be back soon with another video when something interesting happens, and I'll let you guys know I'll be around. So be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified whenever anything new goes up. That's about it for me today. I will see you guys next time with another video from all the way in freaking Narnia. Watch out for the people nightmare bears. And in the middle of a fight, it turned out that he discovered, you know, when the I'm gonna shut up now. Rogue ass